For an expert's take, we're going to join Robert Kelly. He's the Associate Professor with the Department of Political Science and Diplomacy at Pusan National University. Professor Kelly, in the past we have seen North Korea pulling the plug on these meetings at the very last minute. How likely is Pyongyang to follow through with this event?
I think they'll follow through this time. There was a big semi-war crisis here in the last couple of weeks, beginning with the landmine assault at the beginning of August. And the North and the South sat down for sort of extended marathon talks in order to resolve this. And this was one of the things that came from it that was part of the wind down of the crisis. I'd be pretty surprised if the North would back down on this because it was kind of a big deal a couple of weeks ago.
Now, another item on the agenda that's being closely watched at the talks today is the possibility of holding these family reunions once again on a regular basis. Do you think that will go through?
I don't. The North has, as you said before, as you noted, the North has sort of a tendency to pull the plug in these things and use them for political purposes. The North has nothing to gain by allowing these things to be regular and to be taken for granted by South Korea. They would rather sell them to the South for some kind of concession, fuel or money or rice or political protection from criticism or something like that. And so my guess is the North will do this now because of sort of it's part of the quid pro quo of the conclusion of the crisis in August. But in the future, they'll probably bargain it away for something if they permit it.
So if the North is going to try to hold out for future leverage, we do take note that the people involved are getting on in their years. What do you think should be done to try and resolve the pressing humanitarian issues?
Well, I mean, the age of these people makes it a pretty compelling, as you said, sort of emotionally or sort of morally makes it very compelling to allow the North to permit these things to happen. I think that's one reason why these things do. The North normally doesn't allow stuff to take place without, like we said, selling it for something. But this is so obviously moving, right? These people, you know, they're very close to death. Many of these people, they're in their 80s, right? But the long-term way to get this to work would be to sort of have sustained negotiations between the North and the South, where this would be a regular part of the discussion. But it's not, you know, North Korea has a tendency to walk out on meetings and it has a tendency to sort of walk away from agreements that have been concluded. So it's very hard to actually negotiate with the North. That's why these things are so choppy. The choppiness in the family reunions mirrors the choppiness generally in negotiating with the North.
Professor Kelly, what's your take on the current state of play between the two Koreas? I mean, it appears that the military tensions have eased and they seem to be engaging again in dialogue.
They are. But, you know, as we said, this comes and goes, right? The North the North has not really made, not in a long time that I can think of, made a major concession that really changes the way the two of them deal with each other. Instead, what we get is sort of cycles of provocation, followed by war threats, escalation, the Americans get involved, the global media starts paying attention, and then things calm down because the North doesn't really want a conflict. What we're really looking for is North Korea to make some kind of serious concession, like regular family visits, for example, or some kind of concession on the nuclear talks. But until those things happen, I predict that we'll just have more of these kinds of cycles of provocation. We'll be here again in a year.
Now, long before that, on October 10th, that will be the 70th anniversary of the ruling Workers' Party. Do you see the likelihood of further provocations from the North?
I don't think there will be a direct provocation. There won't be an attack the way there was a month ago. But there will be some, my guess is there will be some kind of event. North Korea has a pretty well-established tendency to celebrate its internal secular holidays built around the regime, the birthdays of the regime founders and things like that. They have a pretty established tendency to do big things on those dates. So I would imagine that this one is pretty big, and there'll be some kind of, you know, maybe like a missile launch or there'll be some sort of artillery test that's kind of provocative in the Yellow Sea. There'll be something would be my guess, yes.
Professor Kelly, we appreciate your time and your insight. I've been speaking with Robert Kelly, Associate Professor with the Department of Political Science and Diplomacy at Pusan National University.